What if I were to tell you that the thing making your coffee taste smooth each morning often is not cream at all, but a big food formula built to survive shipping, sit on shelves, and keep you buying it? That smooth splash is often a mix of oils, gums, sweeteners, and additives pushed through FDA loopholes, then sold back to you as comfort, not because it fits human biology, because it fits corporate margins. And one of those additives is especially hard to ignore. There is a whitening agent that has already been banned from food in Europe, yet it still shows up in the US creamer conversation because our system moves slower and the labels do not always make this easy to track. In a few minutes, I will show you exactly what to watch for. And this is why it matters. This is not one bad breakfast. It is a small dose, every day, for years. A slow poison model hidden inside a morning ritual. So today we are going through 8 creamers I would avoid, and then 4 that are actually safer. But first, we need a simple filter, because once you see how these products are built, the label starts falling apart fast. Now, coffee by itself is not really the villain here. The problem is what big food turned coffee creamer into. When you flip over the bottle, the same red flags keep showing up. Added sugar, industrial oils, thickeners, emulsifiers, vague flavor systems. It is the same processed food pattern, just dressed up as comfort. Let's start with carrageenan, because this one shows up a lot. Carrageenan is a thickener made from red seaweed, and it is used to make a creamer feel rich and creamy. Technically speaking, that's true. It does improve texture. But here's the thing. Research has raised concerns about carrageenan and irritation in the digestive tract, and some reviews have linked it to intestinal inflammation. One animal study used concentrations from 0.1% to 5%, and within 6 to 12 weeks, researchers were already seeing colitis and tumors. That matters because your gut lining is supposed to work like a coffee filter. It lets useful things through and keeps the wrong things out. When that lining gets irritated over and over, the system stops working cleanly. Then you have the fat side of the story. A lot of these creamers get their body from soybean oil, palm oil, sunflower oil, or older hydrogenated oil formulas, not from actual cream. This is where the label plays games with you. The bottle says creamy. Your brain hears dairy. But the texture is often coming from cheap industrial fat plus stabilizers. And many of these oils are high in linoleic acid, an omega-6 fat that becomes a problem when it dominates the diet. The question becomes, why are we building a daily ritual around the cheapest possible fats when real cream already exists? Then there are the shelf stability chemicals. Dipotassium phosphate is one you will see a lot. Its job is not to nourish you. Its job is to keep the product smooth, stable, and profitable. Same with things like mono and diglycerides, Galen gum, cellulose gum, and polysorbate 60. These are formulation tools. They help products sit on shelves, survive shipping, and still pour the same weeks later. Human biology comes second. And then we get to the halo words: natural, plant-based, dairy-free, zero sugar. These sound clean, they sound modern, but a plant-based creamer can still be sweetened water with seed oils and gums. A zero-sugar creamer can still be packed with sucralose, acesulfame, potassium, and maltodextrin. Technically speaking, the label claim may be true, but the reality is the product can still be ultra-processed. One more trick: serving size. Most labels use 1 tablespoon. That right there tells you everything you need to know. Very few people pour one neat little tablespoon into a large mug of coffee. Most people use 2, 3, sometimes more. So the sugar, the additives, and the oils all stack fast. So that is the standard for this list. I'm looking at ingredient quality, additive load, sugar or sweetener burden, and how far the product drifts from anything close to real food. And with that filter in mind, the first two are the ones most people trust the most. First up is Coffee Mate Original. This is one of those products people trust because it feels plain. No fancy flavor, no dessert name, just original. But when you look at the ingredient list, you can see what it really is. Water, corn syrup solids, soybean oil, and then the usual support crew. Dipotassium phosphate, mono and diglycerides, natural flavor, carrageenan. So what are you really pouring into your coffee? Not cream. It is basically sweetener and industrial oil, engineered to act creamy. Why does that matter? Because this is the kind of product people use every single day without thinking twice, and the daily use part is the whole issue here. Corn syrup solids are still a processed sweetener. Soybean oil is still an industrial oil. Carrageenan is still there doing the texture work. The reality is, this is a shelf-stable formula built for cost and consistency, not for your gut, not for your metabolism, and not for anything close to species-appropriate nutrition. Now, let's move to International Delight French Vanilla, because this one is where the fake indulgence gets more obvious. Here, the formula usually starts with water, sugar, and palm oil. Then you get sodium caseinate, dipotassium phosphate, carrageenan, mono and diglycerides, and natural and artificial flavors. In plain English, that means sweetness, processed fat, texture chemicals, and lab-made flavor doing most of the work. And this one is easy to overpour. Vanilla is soft, sweet, and familiar. It turns coffee into dessert without you really noticing. GoodRx notes that many popular flavored creamers add around 5 grams of sugar per tablespoon, and EWG points out that just 2 tablespoons in 2 cups of coffee can hit 20 grams of added sugar, or about 80% of the daily limit for women. Now, quick pause. Before we move to the healthier labels, look at the pattern. Dipotassium phosphate, mono and diglycerides, carrageenan, palm oil, artificial flavors. If I laid those out in little glass beakers on a lab bench, you would not think breakfast. But Big Food adds a soft label and a cozy flavor name, and suddenly, it feels normal. And here is the next trap. A lot of people think the zero sugar bottle is the escape hatch. It is not. In some cases, the replacement system is just as processed, and maltodextrin can hit harder than people expect. So let's look at the sugar-free version next. That one is bad enough, but this next one is where the health halo starts to get really cynical. Coffee Mate sugar-free French vanilla sounds safer on the front. No sugar, less guilt, better choice. But flip the bottle over and you still get a highly formulated product. Water, corn syrup, or corn syrup-derived ingredients, soybean oil, maltodextrin, dipotassium phosphate, carrageenan, sucralose, and acesulfame potassium. So instead of fixing the problem, they just changed the sweetening system. This matters because a lot of people buy sugar-free products while trying to clean up their diet, but the formula is still built on industrial logic. Artificial sweeteners like sucralose and ACE-K are there to keep the sweet taste. Maltodextrin is still a processed filler, and it can have a higher glycemic index than table sugar. Soybean oil is still doing the creaminess job. Carrageenan is still there. That right there tells you everything you need to know. The label changed. The core product philosophy did not. And then we get to International Delight Zero Sugar French Vanilla, which might be the clearest example of how modern wellness marketing works. Zero sugar sounds like a clean upgrade, but the ingredient list usually includes water, palm oil, maltodextrin, sodium caseinate, dipotassium phosphate, carrageenan, polysorbate 60, sucralose, gellan gum, acesulfame potassium, plus natural and artificial flavors. That is not simplification. That is a chemistry set wearing a healthy-sounding label. Polysorbate 60 is one of those ingredients most people never think to question. But here it is, sitting right in a product marketed to people trying to make a better choice. Now, before we move into the plant-based and premium-looking bottles, here is the reality check. In Europe, titanium dioxide has been banned from foods. In the US, you still have to watch labels and ingredient changes yourself because the system moves slower and companies keep reformulating. So when a bottle looks cleaner, more premium, more wellness-coated, that does not mean the formula suddenly respects your biology. It means the marketing got better. And wait until you see what happens with the almond and plant-based bottles. This is where companies use clean design, soft colors, and tiny amounts of the headline ingredient to sell you a much more expensive version of sweetened processed liquid. The bottle looks better. The formula often does not. So we are halfway through the avoid list, and the pattern should be pretty clear now. The familiar giants are not selling cream. They are selling stability, sweetness, and texture. But this next group is where things get even more deceptive, because now the labels start looking healthy. Next is Silk Sweet and Creamy Almond Creamer. This is where the marketing gets smarter. The carton says almond. The design looks clean. The whole thing gives off this calm, healthy vibe, like you're making the enlightened choice. But when you strip the branding away, what you often have is water, a tiny amount of almond, added sugar, and gums like Gelen gum and locust bean gum doing the heavy lifting. And that matters because most people are not buying this for taste alone. They are buying the story. Almond means wholesome. Plant-based means lighter. Dairy-free means cleaner. But the reality is, low almond content plus sweeteners and thickeners is not some ancestral food. It is sweetened, thickened liquid with wellness branding wrapped around it. If your body is reacting to gums or you are trying to get away from daily ultra-processed inputs, this is not really an escape hatch. Now, here is where the pattern breaks a bit, because the next brand looks even more premium. Califia Farms Hazelnut Almond Creamer comes in a sleek bottle, costs more, and feels like the kind of thing a health-conscious person should trust. But when you check the label, sunflower oil often shows up near the front, along with pea protein, natural flavors, and minerals or gums, depending on the variety. So what is the issue there? First, sunflower oil means the creaminess is still being built with an industrial seed oil backbone. Just because the bottle looks expensive does not change the chemistry. Second, pea protein isolates can be rough for some people digestively. Whole peas are one thing. Isolated protein in a processed liquid is another. And then you get natural flavors, which can hide a lot. This is the kind of product that wins on image. Minimalist bottle, soft colors, plant-based badge. But the biology does not care about the bottle design. If the formula is still built around seed oils, isolates, and flavor systems, then it is still the same processed food logic, just dressed better. And if this all feels a little bleak, stay with me. The safest pick on this whole list is also one of the simplest and cheapest things in the dairy case, which tells you a lot about how backwards this market has become. Then we get to Dunkin' Extra Extra Creamer. This one is the coffee shop trap in a bottle. It promises that sweet, rich chain store taste at home, which sounds convenient until you realize what that taste usually is. Sugar, skim milk, cream, water, and then stabilizers like potassium citrate, dipotassium phosphate, carrageenan, and natural flavor. Now, technically speaking, there is real dairy in here. But here's the thing. The product still leans heavily on sugar and stabilizers to recreate that coffee shop hit. And because it is called extra extra, people tend to pour it like it means something. Heavy, generous, almost as if the brand is telling you not to use restraint. So your coffee stops being coffee pretty fast. It becomes dessert in a mug before breakfast. That is the real problem with these cafe-style creamers. They normalize a sweet palate first thing in the morning, and once your brain expects that hit, plain coffee starts to feel flat. That is not accidental. Big Food knows exactly how flavor conditioning works. Last in this avoid group is Coffee Mate Hazelnut, and this one really shows how fake indulgence works. The bottle gives you the nut imagery, warm brown tones, hazelnut cues everywhere. But actual hazelnuts are not doing the work. Flavor chemistry is doing the work. The base is still the usual oil-forward creamer formula, with artificial flavor-style indulgence layered on top. Now, one thing I want to be careful with here is titanium dioxide. This is better treated as a hidden additive to watch for, not something you assume is in every bottle. EWG notes that some creamers can contain it, and it has been banned in the EU, but formulas vary by product and market, so you need to verify the actual label in front of you before claiming it is in your bottle. That part matters. Even without that ingredient, the bigger pattern is still obvious. Nut imagery without nuts, creaminess without cream, flavor without food. This is what happens when the product is designed around cost, shelf life, and repeated buying, not nourishment. So across all 8, the pattern stays the same. Sugar or artificial sweeteners, industrial fats, gums, emulsifiers, and vague flavor systems. Different labels, same formula logic. Now, do one quick check before we get to the safer picks. Go to your fridge and read the first 3 ingredients on your bottle. If you see water, sugar, and oil near the top, you are not looking at cream. You are looking at a stabilized industrial formula made to imitate cream. Once you do that once, this whole aisle starts making a lot of sense. So the question becomes, what does a safer creamer actually look like when you strip the marketing away? So what does safer actually mean here? Not perfect, not magical, just closer to real food, with fewer ways for the label to fool you. The standard is simple. Fewer ingredients, no carrageenan, no sucralose or acesulfame potassium if you can help it. No soybean, palm, or sunflower oil acting as the main source of creaminess. And ideally, low or no added sugar, with real dairy fat or a simple unsweetened base doing the work. That is the filter. And once you use it, most of the aisle drops away fast. The first safer pick is the least exciting one on the shelf, and that is exactly why I like it. Organic half and half. Usually the ingredient list is just milk and cream. That's it. No gums, no flavor systems, no whitening agents, no synthetic sweeteners trying to trick your tongue. GoodRx specifically points to half and half as a simpler alternative because it is closer to its natural state and avoids the additive stack you see in most creamers. And here is the bigger money angle. For years, real dairy fat got painted as the bad guy, while ultra-processed creamers got sold as modern, light, and convenient. Why? Because you cannot really engineer a huge profit story around milk and cream, but you can build one around water, cheap oils, additives, and branding. You can patent formulas, you can stretch margins, you can turn a basic food into a manufactured system. Now, that does not mean half and half is magic. It means simple beats engineered. Your body knows what milk and cream are. If you tolerate dairy well, this is one of the easiest ways to get creaminess without turning coffee into a daily chemistry experiment. And if you do not do well with dairy, then skip it. Safer does not mean unlimited. It means less processed and less deceptive. The second safer pick is pure unsweetened plant milk, and I want to stress the word pure here, not barista blend, not vanilla delight, not sweet and creamy. I mean plain unsweetened almond milk, soy milk, or oat milk with a short ingredient list. GoodRx also flags pure unsweetened plant milks as one of the better options when people want a dairy-free route. Why is this better than bottled creamer? Because it is usually much less engineered. You are not dealing with the same dessert-style formula built to hit sugar, fat, and flavor all at once. You're using a simpler base to lighten coffee, not a product designed to make coffee taste like cake batter. That is a big difference. Now, some unsweetened plant milks still use a few stabilizers, and that is worth checking. So flip the carton over. If it reads like water, almonds, maybe salt, maybe vitamins, that is one thing. If it starts drifting into oils, gums, flavor systems, and a long additive tail, put it back. The cleaner ones are just a tool. The highly engineered ones are basically creamers wearing a softer outfit. Third is Nut Pod's Unsweetened Original. This is probably the best known packaged creamer that gets close to the standard without pretending to be perfect. It uses an almond and coconut base. It is unsweetened, and sources like CSPI specifically mention unsweetened nut pods as a better direction than the mainstream sweetened giants. It also avoids carrageenan, which is a big plus. Why does nut pods stand out? Mainly because it helps people break the sweetness habit. A lot of creamer addiction is not about creaminess at all. It is about training your brain to expect liquid dessert every morning. An unsweetened option interrupts that loop. That said, it is still processed. You still need to compare labels, especially across flavors, because companies reformulate. But if you need convenience and want one that sidesteps the worst usual suspects, this is one of the better picks. The fourth, safer category is for people who know they are not ready to go fully plain, and that is fair. Some people want flavor. According to CSPI, a few zero added sugar or low sugar creamers look safer than the usual zero sugar bottles because they avoid sucralose and acesulfame potassium. Their examples include Silk Zero Sugar varieties, Natural Bliss Zero Added Sugar, and Chobani Zero Sugar, which use stevia, and in Chobani's case, some allulose. That matters because if someone is trying to cut sugar without jumping into the usual artificial sweetener trap, these can be a better compromise. CSPI also points to options like Silk Original Soy Creamer and Elmhurst flavored creamers with lower added sugar. So if you absolutely want flavor, this is the tier I would start with. Still, there are caveats. Some people notice an aftertaste with stevia. Some people get mild GI issues with allulose. And dairy-based flavor options can still be an issue if lactose does not work well for you. At this point, we have 4 safer paths, but one simple shopping rule beats all of them. If the first ingredients are water, sugar, oil, and gums, put it back. If the ingredient list reads like a chemistry set, put it back. If the words plant-based or natural are doing all the heavy lifting, flip it over and verify. Because this aisle is really just one small window into a much bigger pattern. For decades, the same processed food system pushed cheap seed oils, fake low-fat health claims, and shelf-stable formulas that reward manufacturing efficiency over biology. Creamer is just another example. So here is the move I would make this week. Step down the sweetness over 1 or 2 weeks instead of trying to force a heroic overnight change. Add cinnamon. Use a few drops of real vanilla extract. Try actual cream first and see if your taste buds reset. The safest creamer is often the one that looks the most boring, and that right there tells you everything you need to know. If you only take one thing from this, let it be this. The safest creamer is usually the one with the least impressive label and the shortest ingredient list. The real problem is not one splash. It is the daily stack of oils, gums, vague flavors, and sweeteners. So check the bottle in your fridge today. If one surprised you, tell me below. And if you want more label breakdowns like this, hit subscribe, because this same pattern shows up all over the grocery store.